Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive. I think is going to be really relevant, even though the book we're looking at came out a while ago. We're digging into The Humiliation of the Word by Jacques Ellul.
This book, man, it feels like it was written for today, even though it's a few decades old.
Right.
It's all about how we're bombarded with images constantly and what that's doing to our relationship with language, how we think even.
It's so true. And he was writing this in the 80s. Can you imagine?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Like no internet, no smartphones, no social media. And he was already...
Wild.
Yeah, he was already seeing this huge shift towards images as the main way we communicate. And he was worried about it. Like, what happens to language? What happens to truth? Big questions.
Okay, so let's get into it. Ellul talks about these two universes, the visual and the auditory. What did he mean by that?
So basically he's saying there are these two fundamental ways we experience reality, what we see and what we hear, what we get through language.
Okay.
The visual world is immediate. It's about concrete stuff, shapes, colors, objects, the things we could literally see.
Like if we were hanging out in a park, I could point to a tree and we'd both instantly be like, yep, that's a tree.
Exactly. We don't even need words for that.
Ooh.
But then there's the auditory universe, the realm of language, and that's where things get really interesting. Because language allows us to go beyond that immediate visual experience. We can talk about things we can't see. We can talk about ideas, emotions, concepts like truth or justice.
Right. You can't just point to justice, but we can talk about it. We can debate it. We can try to understand it through language.
Exactly. And for Ellul, that's crucial.
Yeah.
He says language is how we engage with truth with a capital T. It's how we grapple with the stuff that goes beyond just what we see in front of us.
That's fascinating because we live in a world where it's like pics or it didn't happen, you know? Like seeing is believing.
Totally. And Ellul's not saying images are bad or anything. They have their place, for sure.
Right.
But when they dominate our communication, when they become the main way we understand the world, that's when we get into trouble.
Because we might miss out on those deeper truths that require more than just a quick glance.
You got it. It's not just about pretty pictures versus boring words. It's about how we understand truth, reality, even ourselves. And it gets deeper than that, too. Ellul connects language to something even bigger, the divine.
Oh, yeah. He gets into some really interesting stuff about God and language. Doesn't he say that creation itself is an act of language?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In Genesis, God speaks creation into being. Let there be light. Right there, you see the power of language to actually shape reality.
And Ellul doesn't stop there. He talks about how God continues to speak to humanity through words, not just actions or miracles, which is interesting to think about.
Right. It's like God is choosing to communicate on this deeper level through language. And Ellul takes it even further.
How so?
He compares it to how we learn language as kids. Think about it. Our parents use words to teach us about the world, to shape our understanding of everything.
Wow, that's a really powerful comparison. God using language to teach us, to guide us, just like our parents did when we were little. It's like he's having this whole other conversation with us through language. And Ellul connects that to Jesus, too, which I think is fascinating.
Totally. It's like Jesus, this idea of the word made flesh. It's where those two universes Ellul talks about, they come crashing together.
Right. You have the visual reality of Jesus as a person, but also the deeper truth he represents, the word.
Exactly. And Ellul was really concerned about people missing that second part. He'd say you can't just think of Jesus as a historical figure, a guy who lived a long time ago. You need both the history and the truth that's wrapped up in the stories, the teachings, the whole idea of the word.
He uses a really striking example from the Bible to get this point across the whole thing with Moses and the stone tablets.
Oh, yeah. When Moses sees the Israelites worshiping the golden calf and he smashes those tablets, what do you think Ellul took away from that?
It seems like he's saying the Israelites, they got so caught up in the visual, the golden calf, that they forgot the real meaning behind it, the law that those tablets represented.
And that's what Ellul's worried about. When we focus too much on just the visual stuff, we risk losing sight of the deeper meaning, the truth. He saw this happening even back then, and not just in religion.
Really? How so?
He tells this story about talking to a group of young people. They had seen all these images of the conflict in Algeria. You know, photos in newspapers and magazines.
And remember, this is before the internet, before 24/7 news coverage.
Exactly. But even those limited images, they had a powerful effect on these young people. Ellul tried to talk to them about it, about the deeper issues, but they were stuck on the images.
It's like they were saying, yeah, but we saw the pictures, we know what's going on.
Yeah, and for Ellul, that was a huge warning sign. He realized just seeing something, even a powerful image, doesn't mean you understand it. And sometimes those images can actually get in the way of real understanding.
It makes me think of that Edgar Allan Poe story, The Oval Portrait. Ellul talks about, remember the painter who becomes obsessed with capturing his mistress's image in a painting?
Oh, yeah. Creepy story. He gets so caught up in getting her likeness just right
Yeah.
that he doesn't even notice she's wasting away in real life.
It's like a metaphor for the whole problem Ellul's talking about. We get so focused on the image, the representation, that we miss the actual reality.
And that's what he's warning us against. This tendency to prioritize the visual over the verbal.
Yeah.
Because in that process, we risk losing something essential, our ability to think critically, to really engage with complex issues, to understand the world and each other in a meaningful way.
Yeah, it can feel kind of overwhelming when you think about it this way. You know, like Ellul was writing this in the 80s, and we're out here in the future practically drowning in images.
Right. Imagine what he'd say about today's world. With social media and memes, and like you said, we're practically drowning in images. I think it'd be a mixed bag for him. On the one hand, he'd probably say, see, I told you so. But on the other hand, I think he'd see it as this new challenge for language, this new arena where we have to fight for the word.
So how do we do that? How do we reclaim the word in a world that's so obsessed with the visual? Like, especially online, where everything's so quick and image-based. You fire off an emoji, share a meme, and that's it.
It's tough, for sure. But Ellul would say it starts with remembering the power of language itself. He talks about this idea of open language, language that's clear, direct, accessible to everyone. Maybe in today's world, that means being more thoughtful about the words we use online, even in casual conversations.
Yeah.
Like instead of just firing off a sarcastic reply, take a minute to actually engage with what someone's saying.
And not just online, right? Like taking that same thoughtfulness into our offline conversations too, trying to really listen to understand where the other person is coming from, even when we disagree.
Absolutely. It's about remembering that words have power. They can build bridges. They can challenge us to think differently. They can help us connect on a deeper level than just trading images back and forth.
It's about not letting the images do all the talking for us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've got to use our words too. And not just in quick little bursts. We need to be reading too. Ellul was a big believer in the power of reading, especially reading, deeply engaging with those complex ideas you find in books and longer articles. That's how we build up those critical thinking muscles.
It's like going to the gym for your brain, right? You gotta work those muscles if you want to be able to think for yourself.
Exactly. It's not about becoming anti-technology or anything. It's about being mindful about how we use it, about making sure we're not letting the technology use us.
I like that. It's about finding that balance between appreciating the power of images, but not letting them become the only way we see and understand the world.
Exactly. Because the world is more complex than any image can capture. And it's through language, through those conversations and debates and struggles to understand that we can really start to grapple with that complexity.
It's a challenge for sure, but it's a challenge worth taking on, don't you think?
Absolutely. I think Ellul would be proud of us for even having this conversation, for recognizing the stakes and being willing to engage with these ideas. I think that's the first step.
Well, on that note, I want to thank you for joining me on this deep dive. It's been really thought-provoking, and I think Ellul's ideas are more relevant now than ever.
I agree. It's been a pleasure talking with you about this.
Yeah?
And for everyone listening out there, keep those words flowing, keep thinking, keep questioning, keep diving deep.
And until next time, remember the power of language. Don't let it get lost in the sea of images.